Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Steven Spielberg's AI, Artificial Intelligence, in 2001. And yes, back of course with another Spielberg, although very, very different, of course, to his other films. We'll get to that, and of course, this will be a very, very different review. Spoilers alert, but again, different review alert. This is going to be very, very different. I will be talking a little bit about how this film came about right now. Of course, this is one of the most interesting Spielbergs in terms of the nature of this, because yes, this is a film, of course, where Stanley Kubrick was somewhat involved. Stanley Kubrick and Steven Spielberg are the two filmmakers for me that are the greatest of all time, and the ones that have inspired me the most. The two reasons why I'm so obsessed and so passionate about films, and the reason of course why I do YouTube. Really, mainly these two guys who, above all have kind of just made me obsessed with cinema, and of course actually want to pursue this so much. Of course, the actual movie magic, is defined by these two the most, and yeah, these are my favourites, and of course it was so interesting, over the years. I had only just seen this last year for the first time, AI, and I was very, very interested in this, building it up, of course, very, very divisive film. One of the most divisive Spielbergs. It's not kind of it's not a one like Hook where it's kind of flat out hated as much, but although it has a cult following, this is kind of just some love it, a lot. Some don't like it at all, and you've got some people that are very just mixed about this. And yes, we'll get to this, but of course, very, very different Spielberg review here. Spoilers alert, and kind of different Spielberg alert here, kind of review here. This is going to be different from my other reviews, but yes, of course, you'll know why. This is very, very different because Kubrick, of course, the beginnings of this, was kind of from Kubrick. He was the one that kind of storyboarded, a lot of this, originally, and it's kind of considered, a collaboration between the two filmmakers. It's actually pitched a lot of the time as this, referred to as a Kubrick slash Spielberg, film. And I don't personally, I'll get to why now, but I don't feel this is a collaboration at all. I think this is a tribute, that Spielberg has made to Stanley Kubrick. Of course, a fellow filmmaker and a fellow friend. This is something that very, very, changes, my feelings for many things, about the actual nature of the film. And yes, this is a film, basically, as I say, Kubrick in the 80s and the 90s mainly, eventually giving this off to Spielberg and saying, I think you should direct this. You'd probably be the right person to do this. He trusted him with doing this AI project, and it never came about until after Kubrick's death, the tragic death of Stanley Kubrick in 1999. And then, of course, this was made in 2001. Spielberg thought, I'm going to go ahead with this and give it my best. And I think it's very, very interesting because I only just watched this last year, and I didn't know what to think of the film beforehand. And I watched it, and I think what this is, what I see this as. Again, once again, on the rewatch, a few days ago, my only rewatch of the film. It's a very, very interesting film, and what I see this as is nothing but a tribute, a wonderful tribute, of course, to a fellow filmmaker, as I say, and a fellow friend. It's not a collaboration in my eyes, of course, because yes, storyboarding and stuff, and even drafts and stuff, screenplays, were done by Kubrick and the team. But I don't think you can call this a collaboration if Kubrick wasn't alive as well. And the way that the origins of a film, as we should know, very, very different. Can sometimes be completely entirely different from what appears on the screen. In that final frame, of course, and the final image. This is entirely different at times, and as we know, scripts are rewritten and rewritten, and Spielberg is credited. This is one of his only full credits for the screenplay and directing, because a lot of times, apart from ones odd ones out like kind of Close Encounters, for example, he doesn't actually fully write the script, as we know. He's not credited as kind of screenwriter. He is in this, and I consider this 100% a Spielberg film, but I do consider it a tribute to Stanley Kubrick. And of course, some people don't like this film, and a lot of people kind of they say that they didn't want this to happen, and I think, despite me not thinking it's a great film, I think I fully respect and applaud Steven Spielberg for going ahead with this. I think it's a wonderful thing to do from our fellow filmmaker and friend of Kubrick, where a lot of others criticised Kubrick over the years unfairly, and the way the media treated him and stuff. I think there was always someone known as Steven Spielberg who's backing him, and I think it's a wonderful thing for some a filmmaker to do this, to tribute Stanley Kubrick. And I think hats off to Spielberg. I think that is one of the most important things to take from this is it's a gift. It is a really wonderful thing to do, and you put so much passion into this film and creativity. It's definitely a passionate film, and I think nothing but the sincerest intentions from Spielberg, and that's important to say before getting into my actual thoughts on the film. I think I really applaud, and I am very thankful to Spielberg, and I think no one else should have directed this film other than Steven Spielberg, because that is the way, of course, Stanley Kubrick wanted it to be. And Jan Harlan, of course, brother-in-law of Kubrick, and Christiane Kubrick, his wife, were very, very pleased with the film, and they thought that the Kubrick would have been very pleased with the film. So that's what to take from this film is, that's the thing that really I care about more, actually, on this very rare occasion. It's actually just, I think, despite what I think about the film, it's a wonderful gift, and it's the only way it should have been, is the way that it's ended. And yes, the actual film itself, of course, David, and it's Cybertronics kind of company, it's kind of a sci-fi film, where they do have these robots, of course, that, yes, it's basically exploring how robots and stuff, machines can actually feel human emotions. This is what the film is all about. It's kind of pitched as, and Kubrick was referred to this, as well, even, as Pinocchio kind of story, and it kind of is, of course. David, played by Haley Joel Osment, wonderfully, really, at times in this film. Really, really impressive child performance here, and just a film that kind of really tries to explore this, the meaning of, kind of human emotions, and if, robots and stuff can actually feel this, and, be loved and loved back, and, of course, yes, it's a very, very complex film, and, just a film that kind of really explores this. And you've got Frances O'Connor, who plays the mother, of course, Monica, and, of course, you learn that this, her and Sam Robards' character, kind of, their kid is not, kind of there. He's hooked up to a machine, and kind of, they want to basically have a kid who can kind of, that they can love and be part of the family. And it's kind of an exploration at first of this, and if this can come true. And I think the first act, the first 45 minutes, 50 minutes really, is really, really impressive. At times, there's stuff to love here. I think, it's really something else at times. What Spielberg was doing here, the level of passion, level of humanity in this, and it has, like most Spielbergs, the kind of typical magic you feel, and just the kind of the heart you can see, just within this project. And I think I was really, really compelled. This would have been a film that I would say is very, very good, at times great, and just, I think the first act is definitely the best, and it was something that, it's very bizarre at times. A couple of instances, the dinner table scene didn't work for me personally, but it's a very risky film by anyone. It is a film that kind of is something that has never been done. It's very, very bizarre at times. The nature of the film, the way how it can come across on screen, and it's something, of course. Haley Joel Osment, it's a very, very complex role to play, for anyone. But yes, it's something that I can applaud the performance, definitely, and what they were doing here. What Spielberg was doing, in this first act, was something that I really, really respond to, and this is something that, once again, I just realizing, that I really, really like this act, and I think there's a lot to love potentially here, and I think a lot of people respond to this, and for good reason. It's something that's very, very human, and just overall very, very thought-provoking, and just very warm, at times charming, at times very sad, the way he gets treated, of course, by the actual son who comes into play, and as it's a spoilers review, we'll get into some more spoilers soon, but of course, the son comes back, and of course then things arise. More conflict, and it soon leads on to the second act of the film. And of course, as I say, I really praise the first act in particular. But then of course, with all respect, I love the way this is done. But the second act, once you get into that, you've got this tragic moment, and probably the high point emotionally of the film, when of course David, as the mother Monica, cannot take this anymore, of course, because David, is acting out. It's kind of she doesn't feel safe around her actual kid, of course, because of the complexities, of this kind of this robot slash human. Of course, she kind of dumps, basically leaves, abandons David in the kind of the woods and stuff, and with Teddy, who I think at first was a great character as well. Really like this. I love this. How he was involved in the film added a sense of magic to the film. Sadly, not really kind of followed through throughout the rest of the film. We'll get to that now, but yes, this is the high point for me emotionally. He's left, and it's very sad, very tragic, of course. And the film changes then. Once David is left, and he becomes, he searches, of course, for this. He never gives up in his search for love and understanding of this. And it's a very unique film, but sadly, it does, for me, never reached the kind of heights of the first act, and it starts to change. That's the thing. I think it's just purely the fact that the way it's executed, I didn't respond to as much. The second act is definitely still very good overall. I think Jude Law is a great addition actually. Something I don't usually say. I think Jude Law is very good in this film. I did like him actually. I think it's probably my favourite role from him is Gigolo Joe. Very bizarre and stuff, but yes, very warm character, kind of someone who is just kind of, it's a feel good kind of relationship, you could say. At least he adds something to the screen. Whereas where you don't really have as much family drama at all, you have this character, this companion to tag along with David, and it's kind of the same, very different. And I think this is stuff that I really enjoy, and just it is a step down from the first act, because you've got quite a lot of things that just don't work as well, and it's never as moving, never as kind of consistent in this narrative. This is a very kind of, I think, eventually a messy film. Personally, I feel this, with all the respect, and I feel the heart. I feel the intentions of this, but I don't think it works in the final third. This is when it really takes a kind of dip. Unfortunately, this is a film where, in terms of a film I like, and a film I actually like, overall, I think it's one of my least favourite final acts of a film. The last, and I will say 45 minutes, 50 minutes, this is no exaggeration. It's mostly stuff I don't like. Yeah, from a film I loved at times, slash really liked, to the final third where I don't actually like it. I could say really there's nothing much to take from it that really speaks to me. This is a shame. I think the final act just doesn't work for me. It becomes a film that is very flat in its final act. Something that just doesn't. I just don't like the direction it takes personally. And the way that kind of the visuals are as well. I don't think it's something that compels me visually. I don't think emotionally it compels me, and it's very frustrating at times in the final act. I personally feel this, but it's something that I can't say is a bad film, because for me a kind of final act that I don't like. I do think it's a good film overall. To sum it up, I think it's a good film, kind of a human film, where I can take a lot from this, and it does move me at times. It makes me feel kind of very intrigued by what they're doing with the emotions, humanity, and the questions that are raised. And I'm not a big fan of the visuals in this film overall, but certainly the final act is where I don't really like the visuals. I don't like the kind of the final the ending to the film. I think there's a point when this film where you think is ending, and it's not where you think it should be short or anything. It's not about that. It's the fact that you think it's ending, and it would not be a satisfying ending, but then again you've got stuff that kind of keeps going, and it keeps just kind of going and going, coming to a bit where you think it's going to end again, and then it just keeps kind of topping itself with stuff that disappoints me in how it plays out. How I really want this narrative to kind of satisfy me, and it just never really does. It's a shame. The final third is just not for me really, personally. But of course, I really do respect the intentions, and I love this overall this idea of this film, and the project, the way this is a wonderful tribute, no doubt, to Kubrick. And as I say, I think hands down this is the only way I would want the film. In terms of who makes the film to be, I think Spielberg is the only choice, and that's final. But I don't love the film overall, personally. The actual narrative and stuff, and the characters. Of course, Gigolo Joe never comes back into it. You never really get a true kind of resolution with what happens with the family. It's the stuff there was so much built up in the first act, and the second act never followed through really for me fully. And it's an ending that just feels not only does it in itself just feel dissatisfying. It's something that I just don't think works in terms of it feels like a mesh of different ideas, different approaches, as you can kind of tell what I mean there. That just don't don't mix well. I don't think it comes together that well in the final act. I don't think it's something that moves me. I think emotionally, unfortunately, it's flat. With all respect, I think it's a flat final act. 45 minutes, which is a big portion of any film. Even if it was a big epic, but this is a big portion of the film, and it's just something I cannot ignore. It really does diminish the film. Because it doesn't wrap things up in the way that I can take from it. And I've seen it twice now. It's just a film I still can't get over that final act and the way it really does disappoint, and it doesn't follow through. It doesn't feel like a complete narrative in that sense, and it's just I did find it flat. I wasn't really compelled at all by the final act in itself. So not just the way that I was disappointed with the narrative and stuff and the way that the characters played out, but the way that I just wasn't compelled if I just watched this on its own. Just as a film, this is not stuff that I like. It's not. I didn't connect to this. I didn't. I wasn't compelled, and just very flat, kind of drawn out in my opinion, and very messy, and just an ending for me that doesn't work. And I think I can understand how people will find a lot in this ending. I think in some ways I would think that I would personally love the ending, but I just don't. I don't think it. This film is kind of consistent. Truly, and it's not my least favorite Spielberg or anything like that. I think it's a good film, and I give it a 72%. I think the performances overall very good. Jude Law, very good. Here, Haley Joel Osment is very good in this film. Some of the scenes don't quite work. A dinner table scene was not a good scene in my opinion. It's too far. It didn't work. Just broke the tone. And you've got some odd moments, but overall the performances are to praise. Francis O'Connor gives a very emotional performance, and William Hurt, as pretty much always, he is great in this film. He's just very good. Stuff from him. The editing is not bad at all, but I do think the final act, as I say, does not fit, and it's just very messy overall. Not just for the editing, but yes, does play into it. But yeah, it's something that cinematography. Again, not my favourite, but it does have some really good shots overall, and yeah, it's a film that does move me overall. It has many moments that kind of speak to me, and I found a lot of comfort in. But then again, it does have stuff that just when it comes together at the end, I couldn't feel anything. For this final third, as I say, and it has some odd moments, even in the second act. This never fully, reaches the heights of the first act, and the character of David and what they were doing with this, Spielberg was trying to say, and how he was bringing this to the screen, is something that is very intriguing, and I do fully respect this. But again, it's not something that kind of I feel comes together really in that sense, and a good film could have been bordering great actually for me, but overall I have to say it doesn't, because it again, a little decline in the second act, definitely. That's when it was around about the kind of the low eights. Kind of at first, the first act, I would say, if you want my thoughts, it would have been high eights, bordering on the kind of 90% mark. So pretty much a film I really really like, such love. Very intriguing, very compelling, very human. Takes a dip, but then the final third brings us to a low 70% kind of markings, as I said, as I've given my rating, and yeah, I don't think it's below that because it has got so much you can kind of take from this and potentially love. I would recommend the film. It's just definitely very unique, and most importantly as well, it's a film that's full of passion. There's so many films made nowadays that are not at all for any interests of humanity, and they are just for money. There is no denying that, and this is a wonderful gift. Of course, a tribute to Stanley Kubrick, and I'm glad that it turned out in the way that the Spielberg I'm sure wanted it to be. I think it's a great thing to do, and it's just something that really pleases me in that sense, in the fact that it was Spielberg, very close friend and fellow filmmaker of Stanley Kubrick, who went ahead when no one else did, and Kubrick had the trust in Spielberg to do this, and he went ahead and he delivered. He delivered in the way that he wanted to do it. It's a vision, and a tribute, of course, to Stanley Kubrick, and it's very meaningful in that sense, and I'm glad that it was made, and I really applaud this whole process and approach. It's something that's very rare to see. It's something that really it just pleases me in that sense. I don't think it's a great film, if you want my consensus, but I do my overall consensus, but kind of my thoughts. But I do think it's a good film, and it's got definite highs in that first act of the film. This is the best segment. It's definitely so impressive, but again, it takes a gradual dip to a point where the final third is not really for me. Aside from a couple of moments that kind of feel a bit magical, definitely the Spielberg touches. But again, it just doesn't. Overall, that final act is a no from me personally, and that's really what brings the film down. Massively for me. But yes, it's still a good film. Despite my flaws, and yes, highly recommend this film. Really good performances. The script is very human, and you've got some interesting visuals, but mainly it's for the human emotions. How this is about communication, human emotions, and it's just something very with great intentions here. The actual film, the narrative, the story, and how it's trying to what it's trying to do for the viewer, and how it's trying to what it's trying to say, and also as the project, as the tribute, of course, the wonderful Stanley Kubrick, from of course fellow filmmaker and friend Steven Spielberg. So yes, big thumbs up in that sense, and I do like the film. I think it's a very unique Spielberg, and it's a shame that it gets at times flat out hate. But the final act is the main thing for me personally. That I don't really connect to as much. But yeah, definitely another Spielberg I like, and I think it's divisive. I'm on the positive side of this, and I think it's just a wonderful gift as well. A really something that definitely very meaningful in the way it came about, and something that you can kind of take away from it in that sense. It's that whole kind of the way it's a tribute, and I think really impressive at times as well, and overall I do like the film. I do like it, and I'd recommend it, and yes, thanks for watching my review.